Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Star Wars The Old Republic. Well, let me think of the name that we had for it is the Star Wars Bioware January Story Stream, which is a lot of words, but I think it accurately describes what we're going to talk about today. For those that don't know, my name is Eric Musco, and I am the community manager for Star Wars The Old Republic. I am not the person that's going to be talking to you about these things. There's two guys hiding behind the camera right now, and they'll be up here in a second. But I just wanted to go over a little bit about how this stream is going to work, and then I'll introduce those two guys, and we'll get the stream kicked off so you can listen to some awesome story stuff for the Old Republic. So we do these streams once a month. There'll be a story stream and a producer stream. We did 2 weeks ago with Ben, talking about some of the more gameplay stuff, and now we have Charles Boyd and Alexander Freed, who are going to talk to you guys about story today. So I just wanted to go over a couple things going on in the game right now. Keep in mind, we're getting very close to February 1st. That's a very important date. If you are subscribed on February 1st, you will gain early access, 2 days of early access to Chapter 10, which these guys are going to talk about, which launches on February 11th, or you get the 2 days of early access for February 9th. You also get a really, really awesome HK-inspired jetpack, which is very, very cool. So we have all those details on the website, which you can see right above me. You can just go to that website and you can learn all the details about that. And of course, that's February, so as you might expect, you're going to be learning more details very soon about Chapter 11, which is going to be coming in March. Stay tuned for Ben's stream at the beginning of February. We're going to talk about a little bit of those details. Just one last note on the flow of today's stream. So as soon as I'm done talking in about 45 seconds, I'm going to bring Charles and Alex in. They're going to talk about the story so far with Fallen Empire, what you guys can expect in Chapter 10. They're going to answer some questions, some stuff from the stream, some stuff that we've gotten from online. The stream usually takes about 30 minutes, give or take, sometimes longer, sometimes shorter, depending on how long it goes. Charles will recap some of this stuff at the end. If you guys have any other further questions, feel free to post them online, on the forums, Reddit, social media. And we're going to put this video, right after the stream, we're going to put this video over to YouTube. This way you can watch it again or you can share it with your friends. So without any further ado, I'm going to stop talking. I'm going to hide the camera for a second so we don't have this weird transition. And when the camera comes back, there's going to be two better looking people than me, and they're going to talk to you about story, all right? So bye, guys. That's the end of me for today. I'll talk to you guys online. All right, have a good one.
Hey, there we are. Welcome. So for anyone who doesn't know us, I am Charles Boyd. I'm the creative lead for Star Wars The Old Republic. I was the lead writer for the Fallen Empire content. I am joined today by an illustrious gentleman who many of you have at least heard of, perhaps even met, Alexander Freed. He was our lead writer a few years back. He is the primary writer for the Imperial Agent class back in the day. Well-known, well-respected, really a legend in the game writing industry in this day. Thank you so much for coming, Alex, and joining us.
Hey, it's great to be here. I've always wanted to be on the Star Wars Bioware January story stream.
Yeah, so our my first pitch for all of you out there, if you have a better name for this stream that you'd like to suggest, we would love to hear it. Something pithy that involves our names and makes us sound important would be excellent. Now, the reason we're here, of course, we have Knights of the Fallen Empire just came out a couple months back. We want to kind of recap that story just in case there's anyone here who's just kind of tuning in, just getting into it. We'll keep that pretty brief because I know a lot of y'all are here to talk about the new stuff. And then we're going to move right into talking about Chapter 10. That's going to be coming out here in February, which Alex was kind enough to write for us, applying his excellent skill.
It was a privilege to get to work on the game again.
Yeah, it's always great to have you. So, yeah, I think let's dive right in a little bit. I'm going to switch us to a little screen here. Apologize, I am not Eric, and he's much better at this than me. All right. So with Knights of the Fallen Empire, we kind of introduced a whole new storyline, really moved the story of the Old Republic forward in some very major ways. You know, your player character was frozen in carbonite, released 5 years later after the entire galaxy had been conquered by this new group, the Eternal Empire, led here, we see, by Emperor Valkorion and his son, Prince Arkin. They've really become some of our new central villains in the storyline, and it was a really cool opportunity for us to kind of do a mix of old and new. You know, Prince Arkin is this new character. He's got a very cool visual element that really identifies his character. You know, he's got the white robes, the very regal feel, but he's also got the scars and the cybernetics from his time in war. It really kind of demonstrates that influence of the dark side, that sort of infiltration into who he is. You know, he could have been maybe someone better, but he's kind of gone down this dark path that he was driven down by his father, Valkorion, who, as you play through the story, realize is a figure familiar to many of us, the Sith Emperor, in a new form, in a new empire that he had kept hidden from the galaxy. Really, really excited with this storyline to give players more face time, so to speak, with the Sith Emperor. Really give them a chance to talk to him, get to know him, and maybe see a side of him that they hadn't before. It's always really cool when you get to kind of spend time with your villains, right? You know, you actually get to talk to them and see what makes them tick, or at least what they want us to think makes them tick.
Yeah, you get to explore characters in a very different way when it's not in a directly, immediately adversarial relationship.
Yeah.
And both can be rewarding to experience and to write, but you get to sort of deal with entirely different sides to those characters.
Yeah, and it's always just so much more interesting when you can get to know your villains and get to know kind of their motives and what drives them. So it's always a really fun to get to write characters like that and include them in the story.
Sure, and I think that's one of the things that's unique about game writing to a certain extent, is that with everything so heavily filtered through the player point of view, you really do need to get those villains up close to you to have them be a significant presence in your life. It's hard to imagine, you know, Star Wars Episode 4 told only from Luke's perspective.
Right.
Like Vader becomes a much less interesting character in that.
He wouldn't actually even share a scene with him.
No, I think Vader does not show up in that film except as random TIE fighter pilot.
What a different movie that would be. Yeah, I think in game writing in general, that's really one of our key challenges, is letting the player get to know their villain in meaningful ways without having them trapped in a room with them where they can defeat them in the first chapter. It gets to be very challenging. Another one of our villains that I was really enjoyed writing this year is Arkan's sister, Valkorion's daughter. Oh, that's the wrong thing entirely. There we go. Vaylin. Vaylin was a really cool character for us to introduce. You know, she's just so incredibly powerful in the Force, probably the most powerful figure that we've introduced short of Valkorion himself. And just very unpredictable, very difficult to pin down. You never know what she's going to do next. You know, a little bit cracked, very vicious. It's just always fun to write cool new villains that we haven't touched on before, and kind of explore how they bounce off of the other characters in the story. You know, we've got a lot of very serious figures. You know, Arkan is very stoic, very single-minded. So seeing how he and Vaylin have kind of grown up in very different ways and become very different people despite being raised by the same family is something that's really interesting to explore. I feel like family in general is just such a cool topic, a cool theme of the Star Wars franchise in general. And having the chance to kind of dive into that in a way that we really didn't get to do much before in the core game was something that was a really cool opportunity for us, something that I really liked getting into.
Well, and I think one of the interesting things about this particular family and how you're approaching it is most of the Star Wars families that we see are... Not that this is a united family by any means.
Certainly.
But they're at least a family with sort of a somewhat shared set of foundational beliefs and goals, even if each one has a very, very different way of interpreting and pursuing that, as opposed to Luke and Vader, say, where they're just complete opposites. And I think it's interesting to see a family that actually is really more connected than we see from most Star Wars families.
Yeah. One other really interesting aspect of these characters that I like, and you mentioned it about their connections, is how much Arkan and Vaylin both really think of the player in terms of their father, Valkorion, you know, who's kind of inhabiting their mind and speaking to them. They almost don't see the player, them as an individual at all. It's almost like they only think you are Valkorion. That's really their relationship with you. And I feel like that's an interesting twist on the usual kind of hero-villain dynamic.
Sure. Well, and I imagine that that opens up all sorts of interesting potential drama as the player begins to show them that, yeah, the player has something to bring to this as well. It's not just the ghost in his head.
Exactly. Yeah, we've got some very interesting things coming up in future chapters. They're going to kind of dive into that a little. But luckily, the story isn't all villains and things that are bad for the player. We got the chance to introduce or bring back a ton of new allies who join the player in their battles against the Eternal Empire. Characters like Lana Beniko, returning from the Forged Alliances and Shadow of Revan storyline. She's the one who comes in and unfreezes us from Carbonite and rescues us alongside her new buddy, Koth Vortena. He's a new character this expansion, and it's always really fun for me. I came up from writing the Trooper. I really enjoy writing the kind of characters who are just sort of the normal person in this universe of space wizards with laser swords, and so for me, Koth represents that viewpoint in a lot of ways. He's a veteran, he's a soldier, he's a skilled pilot, skilled fighter, but he's never going to be this force user, this grand emperor, or this general commanding huge fleets or anything. He's a guy just mixed into the rest of this, trying to deal with it the best he can, and I always really like that viewpoint.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that you can do with Star Wars that isn't necessarily absolutely, core on-the-nose Star Wars, but can still only be told within a Star Wars context, right? The mythology of the Force and the Jedi and the Sith are fleshed out enough that seeing how other sorts of characters respond to that is a very natural direction for the story to take, even though it's not necessarily the Star Wars story. I mean, exactly. You get a little of it from characters like Han Solo, but that's right on the side of that main story. So getting to explore those key Star Wars themes from a different perspective is always a lot of fun.
Yeah, exactly. Another that kind of brings us to another character that I think really toes that line between dealing with Force users and all of that huge aspect of the game or of the universe of Star Wars. And being sort of the regular person, trying to get by in that universe. Theron Shan, who we see here on the right in his swanky jacket. Theron was a character that was actually originally created by Alex for the comics, right?
Yes, for the Old Republic, The Lost Sons comics, which came out a number of years ago, in which we learn about Theron as essentially a child who was raised by a Jedi Master and taught in all of the Jedi ways, but he's not a Jedi. He has no Force powers, and that has left him with quite a few personal issues. He eventually goes and joins the Republic SIS and becomes a spy. Drew Karpyshyn picked up that storyline in the Old Republic Annihilation novel, and then I think he first appeared in the
Forged Alliance's Flashpoints, leading into Shadow of Revan.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun to write Theron. Again, he has a very unique relationship with so many parts of the Star Wars universe. It's really, we kind of make a joke about it in the game, but the idea that interplanetary super spy was his backup career behind being a Jedi. He's clearly an accomplished guy, despite not being maybe what people thought he would be from birth. I always think that's really interesting that he didn't let that keep him from doing great things or chasing after big things.
Well, for me, a lot of what's interesting about him is that he hasn't turned his back on everything that he learned. He rebels against it in certain ways, but he's also internalized a lot of material about the conscience of a Jedi and the sort of moral grounding that Jedi are supposed to have. He meditates. There are a lot of aspects of that he still incorporates into his life as a galactic super spy.
Yeah. Let's see. Moving on a little bit. Another really fun part of Fallen Empire for us on the writing team was the chance to bring back a few old favorite characters into the story from even further than Lana or Theron. So for today, since we have Alex here, we're going to talk a little about Scorpio, one of my favorite droid characters, and I have a lot of favorite droid characters, so getting to the top of that list is no small feat. I'm sure a lot of other people feel the same way. Scorpio is just so wonderfully malicious but very kind to you and very polite in the same way. You feel like she could kill you in your sleep at any moment, but she'll never quite tip the hat to that for sure, one way or another. And I'd just love for Alex to talk a little about, what was your initial kind of conception for Scorpio? Kind of how did she come about?
Sure. So Scorpio, she's a centuries-old artificial intelligence, and she starts out as a sort of villain in the Imperial Agent storyline. But much like we were discussing earlier, it's always interesting to put the villains in a place where they sort of work alongside the player. And for Scorpio, she is a character who is absolutely brilliant, intensely curious and interested in things. She is not, a droid or a mad computer that doesn't understand humanity or just isn't interested at all, or humanity slash, whatever other intelligent organic species you may happen to have. She just sort of finds them interesting the same way that a scientist finds a lab rat interesting.
Exactly.
Like there's all sorts of delightful discoveries that you can learn from rats, and even their social behavior is sort of interesting in its own right. But that doesn't mean that
they're on the same level.
Yes.
Yeah, that's to me what really makes Scorpio stand out is, while she's capable of intense violence or of ignoring the value of human or humanoid life, that's not what she's all about. She's not out to destroy humanity or just purely about murdering all organics and robots are the best necessarily. She goes much further than that, and it's much more personal to her character about her goal of advancing, of becoming, this sort of ultimate being, the best, the most, advanced thing she could be. It's a much more personal and I think understandable goal than just robot must destroy. It's really fascinating aspect of her.
Well, I think in how she relates to the player too, the fact that she is comfortable coming down to the player's level. She is capable of interacting with lesser beings in a really sort of charismatic way if she actually is interested in trying for whatever. If it suits her purpose, she can seem almost human for a few moments.
Yeah.
But she doesn't have any interest in doing that longer than it actually advances her goals of self-improvement and whatever scheme she has in mind.
Another thing I really like about Scorpio is her confidence. She's always secure in every situation, no matter how crazy it gets. It's like she's not afraid of anything. It's like nothing could possibly touch her, and it kind of makes you worry. Like, what does she know that I don't? That surely if I blasted at her or dumped her out the airlock or something, this would be over and I wouldn't have to worry about her schemes. But she never gives you that impression that there's a way to so simply stop the things she's thinking about or planning.
No, it's very difficult to tell how much of her confidence is maybe just a bluff. And again, I think that partly comes to the notion that, look, if she's bluffing, again, she's a scientist bluffing a rat. There may in fact be some bluster in there, but it's just being handled from such a different way that individual humans would bluff each other and try to make themselves seem strong.
Yeah, so we were just so thrilled when we were able to include Scorpio in the storyline, and we have some very cool plans for her going forward that I won't get into yet, but very excited to see where that heads. So let's get into what I think a lot of you probably tuned in for primarily. Let's talk about Chapter 10, Anarchy in Paradise, featuring a character who we have coyly referred to as Firebrand entirely up to this point, but who, of course, fans of our game, longtime players, and especially Imperial Agents will immediately recognize as Cleo Janis, returning character from the Imperial Agent storyline. If you could, Alex, I think give us a little insight into how you originally kind of came to this character of Cleo. What spoke to you about her personality or made you feel like she was a good fit for the agent initially.
So Cleo is an incorrigible criminal. She is a violent con artist. She is your most exciting friend that you've ever had, right up until she becomes the worst, most nightmarish relationship that you've ever had. because she is a manipulator and a user of people, she fit very well within the Imperial Agent's sort of central themes of identity and lies and manipulation. So on that level, she nicely mirrored the agent. But on the other hand, in terms of her loyalties, she is incredibly independent, and she also has a background as an anarchist. So in that sense, she is a stark contrast to the Imperial Agent, who, of course, starts the game as the dedicated servant of the galaxy's most disciplined tyranny.
Right. Yeah, one of the things I really like about Cleo is that, unlike some characters, she remains very true to who she is. You can have a good influence on her, I think. You can maybe try to guide her in what most people would consider to be a more positive way, but she's not going to just drop everything and say, "Oh, yeah, you're right. I should be, a good, nice person from now on, and I'm just going to drop all this baggage and all these things I've dealt with." She's very complex. She's got a lot going on under the hood, and I really like how that leads to very different kind of interactions with her than perhaps we've seen in a lot of Bioware companions in the past.
And I'm actually really glad we had the opportunity to do that with her, because that's one of the things that I really enjoyed about her as well. Because we were doing a game with so many companion characters, it allowed us to go a little off the beaten path in terms of how these characters would be received. And Cleo is very much not a character who is set before you in this bad state who you then spend the game repairing. She may be broken, but she's put herself back together in a way that she is totally content with.
Exactly.
And I think a lot of players, there's sort of a love-hate reaction with Cleo, which I think is fantastic, because so long as she comes across as interesting and engaging and a point of interesting drama and decisions in the story, that's great. A lot of players, may experience her and go, "Look, I would never romance this woman. What a terrible idea." And they may be right to a certain extent. But she's still adding something to the story experience.
Yeah, she creates a strong reaction, some strong emotion, and I think that's always our goal. Even if that emotion is hatred, you feel something very cool, very deeply about Cleo when you encounter her, and I think that really makes her a strong character. That's what really makes her stand out in that roster of characters in the history of gaming in general. I think another thing we could talk about here is, it's been 5 years since players have seen Cleo, or at least certainly agents. What's that time been like for Cleo? What's kind of brought her from there to now in the story?
Yeah, so one of the things that was interesting to me, when I was sort of handed this, write a chapter, introducing Cleo to a whole new set of players and reintroducing her to the players who already know her, is finding a different aspect of her character to lean on. 5 years ought to change anyone, really. And one of the things that we ended up doing is we're seeing Cleo in sort of a darker, lower point than we ever did in the original Imperial Agent storyline. Whether the Outlander is the Imperial Agent or another type of player, she has lost what she had in that first few chapters. And that has really changed her way of looking at the world, and given her some personal goals. And she is also now armed with the techniques that spending time with the galaxy's greatest spy has given her. So
yeah, she's not the same person that agents first meet. She's got some abilities and some knowledge that maybe people aren't expecting or aren't prepared to deal with.
Yeah, so she's kind of at a low point, which is always bad for people around Cleo. People who have played the Imperial Agent storyline know that she is quite vengeful when she gets it in her head.
Yeah. If things are bad for Cleo, they're bad for everybody. I think it's the takeaway.
She is more dangerous than ever. And She is now playing Anarchist on Zakul. And taking all that, I think it's a really interesting point of comparison with the player, who is also now lost everything, may well be more dangerous than ever with with Valkorion going on, and with the particular situation that is occurring, and giving players the chance to either end up in a sort of feedback loop with Cleo, or to decide whether or not this is really the path they want to be going down. I think gave some good thematic meat to Chapter 10.
Yeah, there's a lot of very cool stuff going on that I can't wait for y'all to see. I just played through the chapter again last night as it's getting close to completion. It's just, even after all these years, it's really cool to see these things come together, and I can't wait for y'all all to see it, because there's a lot to chew on, a lot of very cool character moments that we'll get to experience and really expand on the players' allies and their alliance in an interesting way. I think that's maybe something interesting to talk about as well. We kind of mentioned Cleo is a new character to many characters in Fallen Empire, many of these player characters. So, what do you think makes her maybe as appealing as an ally? What makes her, whether it's personally, whether you like her, or it's her skills? What do you think would drive players to want to recruit her?
So, not giving away anything of significance in Chapter 10, but we are introduced to her as an anarchist, a sort of terrorist operating on Zakul, who's been doing it for quite a long time. That in and of itself, in such a sort of tightly monitored and utopian society, is quite a feat. So that's kind of what brings her initially to the player's attention, and why the player is going, all right, this might be someone who can actually add something to our alliance.
Yeah,
I think for most players, particularly sort of light-sided Jedi types, there may be a lot of reluctance to go, all right, is this someone I really want to bring within the fold here? And that's something that players are going to get to toy with and figure out. Well, how much do I trust this person? How much is what this person has to offer really worth? And how am I going to deal with that? For Imperial agents, it's a slightly different dilemma. They already know Cleo, and I think there are a number of moments that will play very differently for those characters. But for people who haven't encountered them, for people who haven't encountered Cleo, they're going to be feeling her out and trying to figure out, is this right for my team? Even as Cleo is trying to feel you out, because of course she doesn't know you either at this point.
Yeah, she's not just looking to join up with the first interplanetary alliance that comes along. Like she's weighing her options here. She's not sure.
Yeah. So I think for both the Imperial agent and the non-agent players, there are some interesting, slightly different scenes there, and different contexts for some of the decision making.
Very cool. Well, so I think we have a few questions we've gathered up in anticipation of this stream. Let's maybe dive into a few of those and see what people are asking about. I'm going to get my little cheat sheet here. Let's see. First from Cucumber, I think is how to say this name. Will we see more of the Empire and Republic in their current state as the chapters release in the future? I think it's definitely something you'll see a little more of as we go into the future chapters. Actually, Chapter 11, the one to follow this, will give us a little peek into some Republic stuff. I won't say more than that. It's definitely not the central storyline as we go through these chapters, though. Right now, the Players' Alliance hasn't really fully come to the attention of the Republic and the Empire in a major way. They're still very much weighing their options, kind of hanging back. Obviously, they're very much not trusting of one another, still at war in sort of subtle ways, trying to keep out of the Eternal Empire's radar, so to speak. But they're not ready to fully commit to the player's cause yet, and so the player won't be interacting with them in a deep way yet. But we've got some big plans for that going forward in the storyline, and it's going to become a very major part of the story as we move forward. Another question. Will Theron Shawn have a more central part in the upcoming chapters? Good news, yes. Theron Shawn, in fact, is our introducer for Chapter 10. He'll be playing a key role in getting us rolling on that one. And a lot of chapters going forward. We're all big fans of Theron. We wished we could have brought him into Fallen Empire even earlier than we did. And he kind of comes in Chapter 9 and hopefully makes a big splash in that time. But we're really always fans of any opportunity we get to put Theron in the game, and any excuse we get to bring Alex in to tell us about ideas for Theron.
Theron's a busy man. He's not necessarily going to be there for, every moment in every big event. He's got his own things going on, but, when he's there, it should be interesting and relevant.
Exactly. One of my favorite questions from Theodore Fett, appropriately. Question about Mandalorians. Will we see more of them? Yes. And I will say no more than that. We have a future chapter plan that will give us a bit of a view into what the Mandalorians are up to and where they are in the galaxy now. But I don't want to spoil too much ahead of time. That's a little ways out. But yes, for those of you who are big fans of the Mandalorians, we have some content for that coming up. And I'm really excited to say that actually our guest today, Alex, was the writer of that chapter, which will be coming in the future, so maybe we'll bring him back if we can when we talk about that one. But something to look forward to.
Yeah, that was a fun one. I wrote very, very little Mandalorian content in the original game, so this was a chance to sort of get my hands in an area that I hadn't done much with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
that was a lot of information for yes, and I will say no more.
I have a talent for talking about things that I can't actually talk about. Will there be any conflict with our previous love and a new one? Ooh, the juicy stuff. So, for example, if I'm an agent and I've been romancing Theron Shawn, say, in the Fallen Empire content, and now I meet back up with Cleo, who I had a deep relationship with before I froze in Carbonite. Can I resume that relationship as we jump into Chapter 10?
Well, and I think that's an answer that really depends on the particulars of the character and where they stand in life. And certainly, Cleo's relationship with you has a substantial impact on your relationship with her. And you are welcome to try to rekindle that. Whether she's in a place personally to continue that is something that you'll have to play and find out. I'd hate to
give it all away. Yeah. And of course, kind of the obvious kind of follow-up to that question, will my other romances know that I am now resuming a relationship if I'm able to do so with Cleo? And the answer is very much yes. It's a big alliance, but people are still going to know if you are running two romances at once. So other characters will notice if you resume your romantic relationships from before you were frozen in Carbonite, and they're not going to take it well. They probably won't shoot you in the back of the head over it, but you never know.
May depend on the character.
May depend on the character. Some other questions. Something I've seen a lot of questions about the classic conversation style that we introduced in Fallen Empire, and will Chapter 10 be using that as part of its storytelling? The answer is no. Our chapter content will always be the newly advanced cinematic style of conversations and storytelling that we've done throughout Fallen Empire. There will be a new classic story content. Our Alliance characters will continue to use that style of storytelling when we reintroduce them. The character that we're bringing back with Chapter 10 is Blizz, the Jawa, who I'm super excited to bring back into the story. He's just a ton of fun, and his reintroduction is suitably zany in the story.
It's very hard not to love Blizz.
Yeah. He's just so excited about everything. He's on board for whatever.
My reaction to Blizz actually reminds me a little bit of my reaction to BB-8 now that the new movie is out. Like they're both that sort of energetic, adorable, not really intelligible all the time. Fun with gadgets.
Exactly. Yeah. Blizz always seems to have something handy that can solve the problem. Another question here: how long is it going to take to get our original companions back? That's a tough one. I wish I could say tomorrow they're all there. But honestly, it's very important for us with these characters because we know they mean a lot to our players and they mean a lot to us, having worked on writing for them for many, many years. We want to be sure that when we bring a character back, that they are given their due, that you get the kinds of interactions and the kinds of continuation of that relationship that you would really expect from a major character, like using Kira as an example, or Jorgen. You really want to continue certain storylines or reference past actions with those characters. If they're a romance, you expect to have a chance for a little bit of romance with those characters. And so it's a big investment to bring one of them back. And especially, one of the key points whenever this comes up, people say, oh, you're bringing so-and-so back, but I don't care about that one. I care about so-and-so instead, and they're the ones I want. And it's another key factor of bringing a character back into the story is that we need to make sure they are tied in very deeply with what's happening, so that when you meet them, if they are not a character you already know, you get why they're important. You see why they're a really cool or interesting or dangerous kind of figure to get to know, just like Cleo in Chapter 10. It's very important that new players who don't know those characters see their relevance, see why they're a part of the story, and that we're not just throwing a character back in for the sake of doing it. We want to be sure that it's always very much tied into the storyline and feels appropriate.
Well, and I think tying into that, you need a situation that feels dramatically appropriate and interesting for both those characters who haven't met the companion before and those who have. Bringing back a character after 5 years and introducing them the same way you introduced them the first time and revealing nothing new about the character, that's not satisfying for anyone. When you're meeting these characters, you want to learn something new about them. You want to give them a chance to explore things with some real emotion. Mm-hmm. And that takes building a situation that is actually going to reward that.
There's a lot of factors. So the short answer is it will take time, but we will make sure that when they do come back, you feel like it was worth it. We have time for just a couple more questions we'll go through. One, I have seen a lot of questions around getting into Fallen Empire at all. Some free-to-play players or people who are just coming in. How do I get into this new storyline? It sounds cool. I'm intrigued by it. What do I do? So Knights of the Fallen Empire is free for all subscribers. All you have to do is subscribe for a month, and you get access to all of the chapters currently available. Also, when you subscribe, you get a token, so to speak, for a free level 60 character. That's not some literal token in your inventory. You just log in, get to character creation, and you can create a new level 60 character that moves immediately into the Fallen Empire storyline if you're subscribed. There are additional tokens for free levels or for level 60 characters that you can purchase as well. You don't just have to take the one with your subscription, and free-to-play players can get those level 60 tokens, but that does not give you automatic access into Fallen Empire. You will need to be a subscriber to jump into that, but it's very cool. I think in a way I almost wish we had done it this way for a long time. Like, I really like this idea of a subscription where you continue to get new stories every month. I feel like it's a cool kind of episodic new direction for us, and I'm really glad we're getting to do it and share it with y'all.
Yeah, serialized content is it opens up sort of a whole new world of possibilities.
Yeah. So many more things we can do, more cliffhangers, more interesting choices that pay off over time, over and over again.
Cliffhangers at all, right?
Yeah.
I mean, those aren't a tool in a story that you sort of get all at once or in fairly large chunks.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm going to end on my favorite question that I have seen this entire time, and I'm going to direct it at Alex even. From BC Makoto, Scorpio romance? ? What do you think about that, Alex? Would Scorpio ever deign to romance one of our lowly beings?
Well, I think you phrased that in an important way. It really is a question of whether Scorpio would deign to romance you, not the other way around. Again, going back to the scientist and the lab rat thing, I think it's a little tricky to picture, but at least in the original game Scorpio content, there is one moment of flirtation, but how much of that is real and how much of that is Scorpio just twisting you and manipulating you, it's kind of hard to say.
Yeah. So we'll see. Y'all let us know. What would you like to see? Would you want to romance Scorpio? Is that a place you'd like to see the story go? What would happen to you if you did? Would she kill us in our sleep? We have no idea.
I think you can be awake for vivisection.
On that note, we like to end positive here at Bioware. Thank you all so much for tuning in to our first ever story stream. I know of our DVD behind the scenes featurette, so to speak. We're really looking forward to doing more of these. Of course, if you've got more questions, please post them. Forums, Reddit, fire them at me or Alex on Twitter. Any social media, we'll be watching for them. We'll be looking for chances to answer them. We're always happy to talk about this stuff, provided it's not a spoiler. And yeah, I want to say thanks again so much to Alex for joining us today, even though he's even a little under the weather. He came in anyway to talk story with us, and we really appreciate it.
Well, it was a huge pleasure to be here.
Awesome. So I'm going to mute this mic. We're going to shut things down. Thank you all again so much for tuning in, and we'll see you again soon.